Okay, it's our Maestro Mastery call, which, as I just said, I'm going to record and share publicly in our podcast series because here we are, the first one in 2025. So today's the 8th of January, 2025. And I woke up on Monday, which I think was the 5th or 6th or something. And Kelly and I had been talking about the futurist stuff about singularity, and it just kind of went boom, and everything went together for me about the singularity. And, what is a singularity? One definition of it is when something goes to infinite value. And a lot of people talk about a singularity in regards to artificial intelligence, where it becomes exponentially intelligent, more intelligent than the human race. That's one of the, it almost has become the definition of singularity. And so what I realized on Monday morning as I woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning was that it's our collective singularity. And it's focused on, I think, six pieces of evolutionary creation work that we've been about for the past 10, 20 years. And they include the expansion of intelligence, the emotive power of alchemical, initiation, the unleashing of super genius flow, super connectedness, and the new collective consciousness that comes from that, the embodiment of being, and then a kind of a new collective and super consciousness that we live in, or source consciousness that we live in. So you can, that's a lot to take in a single sentence. But, but as I say it, because you were all part of creating that, you probably go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So I thought in this one, we'd walk through each of those segments of evolutionary creation that we've been doing and how those six pieces kind of weave together to give us a moment of collective singularity, upon which I'm writing my book, The Redesigning the Future of Global Civilization. So it's kind of like I think we're in a singularity moment actually this year. Sound good? Mhm. Okay. Should we just all line up first for it to go fabulously and all of that good stuff? Okay. That's great. It feels good. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with the expansion and evolution of intelligence. Now, I'm going to walk you through that a little bit, but I'd love to know as we go, kind of like how many of you are experiencing these things. So, like for me, my intelligence is very different to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Like my intelligence 30 years ago was logical based, mind based. And now it's very knowing based and creationally based. And I think we would probably all say, oh, yeah, we have these moments of like knowing things that how do we know that? It's beyond the coding of the brain, right? You all have those moments of knowing, right? That's one aspect of it. If you look at all the varieties of intelligences, like sensory intelligence. So if you look at how many of you were empathic to begin with, like feeling other people's emotions, being sensitive to the energies, but most any of you, yeah. And have you found that has evolved for yourself in the past 10, 15, 20 years? Yeah, you see, it's the evolution of sensory intelligence. Yeah, Lynn, were you going to ask something?
I was just going to say it's evolved in the way that I've been learning how to use it in a positive way, which I
Yes.
didn't know as a child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So for me, yes, as well, I was at one point quite ultra sensitive, and I began to realize that sensitives had access to levels of energetic awareness and understanding that other people didn't even know existed, that it was a superpower. And I began to actually work with others to elevate it into more of a power than a struggle to discern between yours and other people's feelings. as an empath. So that's sensory intelligence and the knowing. And then I plugged my brain into the universal intelligence. That's how I did it. Others might have done it in a different way, but you find you can kind of get information out of where, like consciousness, the universe, source, where we get, there's a access to what we don't know beyond our thinking brains. And so for me, the expansion of intelligence has been, it's inclusive of many varieties of intelligence. And I can see a lot of you nodding and going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Whereas if I'd have said, do you think you've evolved your intelligence? You might not originally think so. But then looking at it piece by piece of some of this stuff, you would go, oh yeah, yeah, I do have my knowing. I can get information from the universe source, whatever. I have elevated my empathy into a level of sensory intelligence. You see what I mean? Like that's all we're evolving how we get stuff. And I think one of the implications of that is that we can have a greater discernment and understanding, not only of what's going on, but of the potential and possibility of what's on offer from what's going on, which I don't know that we had 30, 40 years ago. I mean, some people might have, but I certainly didn't. It's like even to see the potential of something, even to see what it was for was a bit of a struggle back then. Whereas now something happens and I immediately go to what's the greater perfect purpose? What's it nudging me towards as a greater calling? Any of you finding it's like that for you too? Like it's propelling you to look differently at things. That's all part of the expansion and evolution of intelligence. And you can see, I like that you're all kind of nodding, going, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Like, yes, here we've been doing this for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And now it's in place in a way that we hardly recognize it. Like it's become normal, right? But that's a big deal that we've evolved our intelligence beyond the insular individual logical brain. I think that's really cool movement for us. Okay, so that's the expansion of intelligence, right? You got it? You want to just have a sense of that in yourself and like go, oh yeah, we're evolving and expanding our intelligence as a collective species. Yep, got it? Okay. All right, then emotion. Okay, emotion back 25, 30 years ago, maybe before that, was all about uncontrolled reactiveness. Like it was fear, anger, sadness, grief, whatever it was like it would just pour it out of you. How did you know what to do with it? Even how did you keep it under check? If you tried to keep it under wraps, you'd hold it all within and then that would cause all kinds of manner of problems, but you didn't want to like blurt it out at everybody. So back about early 2000s, I began to talk about emotion as potential rising. So anger as power, fear as leadership, calling to the next thing, et cetera, et cetera. But then what happened as we moved through the last 10, 15 years, emotion has become for me the opening of an alchemical activation portal. So instead of an emotional center with reactive responses, now if anything like that hits me, it's like, woo, big work. Like, can you see, do any of you have that as well? It's like now we use our, what previously looked like an emotional center as a deep alchemical core initiation source point. And that's a big deal to go. So I don't have much emotional reaction anymore. I think I've had one or two in the past 6 months. But when I've had them, I go very quiet inside of it now. So instead of like, "Wah," I go, hmm, what's this for? And I'm able to sit in it, reflecting upon it, waiting for its potential to show its face for me. Any of you have experiences like that? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very cool. I like it. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see how emotions change. Yeah, Sheila.
I would say I'm not quite to the point of being able to in the moment sit in it and alchemicalize it, but very soon after
Yeah.
I recognize it, and then the work starts.
Yes. And has it
Yeah.
taken the charge off the reactiveness for you?
Yeah, yes, to a certain degree. I wouldn't say I'm 100% there yet, but
Mm.
going um, more and more conscious in it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're becoming a kind of super consciously aware that everything that's going on has a kind of purpose to it. And
Hmm.
we're starting to be able to look more easily for the purpose of it,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
take us into next levels of ourselves or greater work or a calling into something that's next. And, when you think about, well, if everybody in the world has that, which certainly available to everybody in the world now, um, there would be no wars. Do you see what I mean? Like that emotional reactiveness of anger, the frustration, there'd be a different response to, I don't know if it would completely end wars. I think there's other facets in it, but you know what I mean? The very fundamental nature of human beings that are emotionally reactive and then do this would dissipate because we would sit in it differently. And that we've created and are living into it in our own lives now. I can see as everybody's kind of going, oh yeah. Like we have a different orientation to it now. Yeah. Anybody want to ask anything or say anything about that so far? Or you want me to just keep going?
Can I can I share an experience I had recently?
Yeah, please do.
Uh, Um, I don't know, a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I had a pretty strong reaction to a friend of my husband's who pushes my buttons. We used to say pushes our buttons, and I got my buttons all pushed by him. And I was, um, it took me just a little while to realize that it's a call for me to deeper compassion here.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and that came up pretty rapidly right behind button pushing. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was interesting. It was really interesting how kind of fast it happened, and I don't feel like I need to do anything about it.
yeah, yeah. You sit in it differently.
Yeah.
And what will eventually happen with it, most likely, is that it will lead you into a piece of work, a piece of transformative, transcendent alchemical work that sources something for the world, because that's where we work.
Yeah.
It may not be obvious in the first moments or the first days after, but it tends to show up because that boom that happens is something emerging from our deep source cores
Hmm.
calling us forward in some way. That's how I see it now. And it's a completely different way of looking at it. It gives you an underpinning of how we operate as a species that's very different. Yeah, beautiful.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's emotive power as the alchemical initiator. That's the way I phrased it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
get it.
so then there's the unleashing of genius and genius superflow. So I do think that genius is pretty much unleashed in the world now. There's still some people, that maybe is still hanging on a little bit, but mostly you'll see a much more creative world at the moment. And that's happened in the last 20, 25 years. that unleashing of genius. And that's come also from the non-reactiveness of emotion, because genius sits in the same space with emotion. It's like, and it's part of, I think part of the emotion was this roar of genius trying to emerge through us. And if we're going to be redesign global civilization, one of the underpinnings is super creativity. And so one of the things I'm passionate about is what I would call super genius flow. So you've seen like people like Michael Jackson or even Taylor Swift, or there's other Chris Martin from Coldplay. There's a lot of artists, songwriters who wake up in the middle of the night with the next song fully formed and the next song fully formed and the next song fully formed. And it's like this non-stop genius flow. It's like for me, that's my 19th book just going up at the moment. And it just pours out of me when it's ready to pour out of me. There are times when there's nothing there to write, and there's times when here it comes, woohoo, like. And one of the things that's happened with the genius flow is that when I first started to play with it, there was the genius natural, unique genius that existed within it, our talents, our abilities, our orientation to writing, dancing, singing, whatever creative endeavors we have. And there was a genius field, and that genius field contained books, songs, and they would orient and they'd flow on through. Well, something's happened to that in the last 2 years, maybe three. Like it's not that and that anymore. It's that. It's all in us and around us and in the air we breathe and in the cells of us and it's very different. Any of you noticing any of that with like if you're doing whatever your genius is, you noticing the difference in it?
And can you say that again, Solaire? What I didn't really get what you were saying.
Okay, so if I go back 5, 6 years ago when I was teaching and working with unleashing genius in people, it would be there's a natural genius inside of us. And then there was a genius field which contained all these ideas and all that kind of stories, songs. They were all there. Maybe we created them, maybe it was our greater beings, but they were in existence. And you'd connect this with this. And if you just opened it and had the flow go all the time, then he was just constantly moving through you as a kind of super flow, right? But it's changed in maybe even in the last year, well, last 2 years for sure, where it's less this and this. It's this everywhere. It's present in us as us. So I find now it's less of I'm surprised by what I'm writing than I am writing it. I would say it occurs that way. And yet the impulse to write, in my case, it still has a will of its own. You know what I mean? Like, it comes to me as an impulse, the next genius thing, whether it's an idea for a webinar, whether it's an idea for a book, whether it's a new concept for consciousness innovation, it comes in impulses to me in a different way. So just wondered if any of you are experiencing any of that kind of the evolution of genius that seems to be happening. Anybody?
I would say I couldn't, I couldn't discern it the way you're describing it. Like, and Solaire and I were talking earlier today about like discern, whether I feel I can discern that my way of knowing is so appreciatively different. And we were talking about, well, some of it is, yes, it is. You're just not clocking it and noticing it because you're just so different. So up until everything else you were saying, I could go, yeah, yeah, yeah. I could get it. But this one, I'm not sure that I could discern the difference between how you describe it as earlier and now this.
I get that. It is very recent. That's a very recent change. So let me track back and say to that anyone can access genius superflow. Most people don't. They access genius in a momentary thing. But the state of, like I was talking about those songwriters, for example, they access a permanent flow state of genius ideas, right? And anyone can put themselves in that space if they want to. Everybody might not want to because you're going to wake up in the middle of the night with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You have a million ideas. You know, I was reading a post on Substack the other day from somebody I don't know, I've never heard of them before. And she was saying, I have ADHD, I have thousands of ideas, I don't know which one to choose. And I said, I think that's a mark of a super genius. I wrote in comments, she was like, really? Oh my God, I never looked at it that way. Like, because you can put yourself into genius superflow and it changes everything, how it occurs for you. It's still you as a genius and the universe as a genius inputter, but it changes how life occurs when you live in, I used to call it hyper creation flow, super genius flow. Yeah. Any of you existing in super genius flow now? Centauri is, yeah.
I
Anybody
wouldn't,
else?
I wouldn't, I don't think,
Maybe.
like,
Maybe.
Yeah. You want to
like
know?
I,
Yeah, go
no,
ahead, Kelly. And,
no,
and then Gunhild.
no, like again, I don't know that I could say that, but I definitely, my entire life, have had the experience of like some big intractable problem at work, and we're having meetings and nobody can figure it out, and I wake up knowing how to figure it out. Like I go to sleep, wake up and I'm like, aha, that's it, and I go in and I'm like, everybody, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So kind of things I've have, throughout my life, feelings of like suddenly you get it. Now, is that just a normal way of being? I don't, I
No, I
can't.
wouldn't say so. Oh, it might be for some people. I wouldn't say it's for everybody. But yes, and then going into Genius Superflow, you can put yourself in that state in a permanent basis to apply to everything you're up to. Right? Gunhild, you were going to say something. And I'll show you how I do it in a minute and see if we can play with it a bit. So, Gunhild?
Trying to see if I could convert what I feel to what you were just saying. And I would say that earlier I would consider myself as what I used to call an early bird.
Hmm.
I would be very early into new things. So my ideas would be maybe 10, 15, even 20 years before mainstream.
Yeah.
I had the feeling we were both connecting to the same place. So the ideas were there, existing there, and you would just go up and if you don't work on them, if you don't act on them, someone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas now I don't have that feeling that I have to work on it. It's like it's mine anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like this is my idea and I can do it now, or I could do it then. But it's not like it's from a collective where everybody's doing this. Do you see what I mean? Is
Yeah,
that
brilliantly put. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's it. Yeah. And that's what I was talking about. At one point it occurred there and now it occurs here.
yeah, that's why I was saying, because
Yeah.
I felt we were all just moving into and getting it down. Whereas now it's like I have my own
Yeah.
sort of, and this is of course connected to a bigger thing, but it still belongs to me in some sort of way. It's
Yeah.
not going to come someone else and say, I saw exactly the same as you did, because they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. And they wouldn't apply it in the same way
Yeah,
necessarily. Your uniqueness will take it
yeah,
somewhere it wouldn't be taken by anybody.
yeah,
I think part of what's happened is the quantum field of possibilities, the genius field of ideas, whatever, all that, the higher consciousness, it was all there, and we were working to get to it. So we would,
Or to pull it down or whatever.
yeah. And I think what's happened over the last 3 years is we are in it and have presenced it for the whole world. So it's less us and it, and more it's everything we are. It's
Right.
everything is. Yeah, Lynn.
I'm just thinking if it's because I'm just playing on what you just said, Gunil. It's almost like my whole world is being mirrored back to me, and it's like a continuous flow of what I am perceiving and what I'm thinking and what I'm picking up.
Yeah.
And there's no sort of separation between me and it. It's like, and I think that's what I'm getting from what you're saying also, Gunil. It's like that.
Yeah.
So then I'm watching something, and that just reflects something else that's there, and then,
Yeah.
but sometimes I get confused also because it's how do I put, what is me mine to act upon, yeah, or especially when I'm doing a PhD, I feel like
But you know,
I'm dying.
did I also just hear you say I am a source of reality?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard you say.
Absolutely, and I feel that I'm more and more a source of reality, and the more I see it not in others, I reflect that back.
Yes. And what happens when we recognize this, and it is a growing new ability in us,
Mm,
because before there was us and there was reality. Like, this is how reality is. And we were inside this thing trying to figure our way through life, right? And life happened to you. But now we're the source of reality, and reality is dancing away like this. We're
mhm.
dancing with
Yeah,
it and inside of it, and everything reflects back to
yeah,
the you as source of reality.
exactly. Because before, like Gunilla, I was also taking in things that were far beyond where most people were, but that was my private little kind of. But now it's yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too that concept of multiple ideas taking over, like you get so many ideas, you just don't know what to do. And me, it's I wouldn't say it's ordered itself, but I'm in charge of it now. Like an idea comes, I go, click, okay, yes, I'm going to do that. How will I do that? Nope, not that one. Pass that on to somebody else. It's like I'm, I'm much more a source of it
Yeah.
now. And also, I think we've just recently, last year, been given the reins of creatorship. And I think this is it's all these things, intelligence, genius, emotion, it's all interwoven. It's all, each one has an alchemical influence on the other, right? And it's like we're now sources of creation in how we want the world to be, and as sources of reality and genius creators, and being in superflow and getting emotive signals from our smart bodies to point us in the right directions. It leaves us in a different state of creation in the world, as creators of life in the world. This has all been morphing together over the last 20, 25 years, right? And really been really powering up in the last 2 years. It's starting to really land even last year, 2024. Started to really land. Yeah. So do you want me to just show you how I go into Genius Superflow? Maybe Centaur could say how he goes into Genius Superflow as well, and just what that's like. So I think first you say yes to it. I mean, that's the key to everything. You have to say yes to it. You have to say you want it. You have to be open to it. And we'll have thoughts and feelings, oh, not now, I'm busy doing this, or I'm in a transition, or, that we'll have all go, or I need to be focused on X, so I can't do this. Don't bother me with ideas right now. But I think Genius Superflow helps everything we're up to. So for me, my access to it is say yes, and then open make a partnership deal with the universe to send me all things mighty and grand and wonderful that is mine to play with in joy and creativity and grace, and to have fun with it, to could lighten up about it. Don't feel overwhelmed by it, but to feel kind of in a kind of joyous creative flow. And it is an opening partnership for me, that at least it began that way. And more I'm becoming the whole of that. So it's less of the universe and me, and it's me as universe kind of thing, or me as source is how it works for me. Centauri, do you want to say for you how it works for you? Genius Superflow?
How it works for me. Very good question. I've said it before in other calls that it's about your relationship to everything. And where you were even talking about the world and the universe, they're almost like conceptual ideas. If we just for a moment forget all about it, that we are an endless stream of something, and you can call it intelligence, you can call it a quantification of energy, you can call it superfluence of something, but just forget all the other definitions for a moment. Everything that you're composed of, we can forget all the elements that we might talk about. You're something which is indefinable, unknowable, something which perhaps has never existed before in any form or concept of form. But now, something has somehow bestowed upon this particular instance the possibility of all life being changed in forever, in a different sequence of events. And you are almost like there at the threshold of something new, and you're speaking it. Words of power, magnificence growing within you, all these things which suddenly sparkle around you. Life. What is life? It's almost like the ideas that you've constructed lives around, they all sort of like just dissipate because something new is growing and wants to be expressed and wants to understand and wants to work in a marvelous and amazing ways that before you, as a singularity, as an insularity perhaps, have never considered what it is that all of this might be. Could you, in your vastest dreams, imagine that you yourself could be the originator of all life everywhere? And when you put yourself in that position, we say, well, why not? Why wouldn't you be the originator of all life? Just a single human being living on planet Earth, doing some amazing things sometimes and going ups and downs. No, we'll push that dream aside. Something else is ready to break upon the shores of your consciousness and change life everywhere, forever. That's the starting point. You, the originator of everything. You, the personification of greatness and magnificence and whatever else you might want to call it. You who put your hands upon somebody else and, wow, they say, what have you done to me? What is it that you've now said to me that I didn't understand the words, but I felt the electric charge run through me? And suddenly I just know things. That's where we operate. That's where we love to operate, because it's fascinating to see other people go, you've just changed my life forever.
Yeah.
You've destroyed my world and now I have to rebuild it anew. And it's, you just delight in those moments because you just see the effervescent change taking place. And you are just a charge point of everything everywhere. And you know that the intelligence, the awareness, the understanding, comprehension, that somehow it all fits together in amazing ways in all these individual forms of expression that we call people. and not just people here, but people everywhere else, because we sort of like confine things to this world, to this experience of life. Like there's just so much more just dancing on the horizons, waiting for you just to reach out and say, ah, there you are. I've been wondering about you. And it says, it's about time you started that wondering because we've been waiting for you to get to us. And so you're in this delicious, luxurious stance of life, which is changing, constantly changing. And your ideas are just going, wow, wow, wow. You're expanding your idea about the omniverse and all the origins of life that might be in other places, dancing and waiting just for you to come along because you are the precedent and the herald of something new for them also.
Beautiful.
And that's what's on offer.
It recalls to me of Gunhild saying when she would get these new ideas, right? Like I think that's one of the things that we probably all have in common is that we were ahead of our times. We were called to something more than currently existed. We were called to make the world brighter and better in some way. We were questing, searching, and knowing something. And that you could call that genius, you could call that source, you could call that God, you could call that universe, you could call that, you know, whatever, greatness. It's something that I think we have embedded in us. I believe everybody does, you know, and it's how we open our lives up to that and the flow of the universe. That's the way I talk about it, that gifts us everything we need to make that so, and it makes us more and more of who we have always been and who we are meant to become. It's like we're living into that experience now, which is brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Satar. Yeah. Does anybody else experience that kind of genius superflow? You want to say anything about how you've experienced it? No. Okay.
Oh,
Yes,
I've experienced it as an entrepreneur. You know, Gunhild was talking about she gets an idea and it's before its time, and I've experienced it as an opening, calling me to walk into it essentially and talk about a possibility of whatever it is in businesses. And I've then, as a consultant to business, I brought that element with me to whatever the flow of whatever the next thing was.
Yeah.
You know, mostly in technology for me, but I experience it as just as getting called to an opening.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice way to put it. Yeah. Lena?
I get so many ideas popping up, weird things, new things, and things that most people don't see it that way. It's usually it things that makes it easier, make it flow better, make it more convenient. But many ideas, I get so many at the same time, so it's kind of I get blocked, so I don't know nothing. I get now and then, and then every time I get an idea, okay, and I see problems and I don't get it. Instead of, I need to learn to focus on just start, and then this gonna figure out later on. I try to figure out every step, and then if I don't have that like 25th step in my head ready, I don't do number one. But I need to train to just start, and it's gonna figure out. But instead I do nothing because it's just too much overload.
I think a lot of people would say they've experienced that sense of too
I can
many ideas
understand
all
that.
at once. Yeah. For me, one of the things I believe you can do is you can tell whoever's, if it's your greater source being or if it's the universe or whatever, you can say, can you slow them down a bit? You send them one at a time. Or
Yeah.
or keep a pen handy, like in the
Yeah.
middle of the night. And I keep stickies beside me. And
Yeah.
I'll jot it down. And also, if I get a whole bunch of them, I can go, I'll write that one down. That one goes to someone else.
Mhm.
You don't have to be the one for all those ideas.
Okay, well, that's good.
You can actually be in charge of that, because often if it, and it may be also, here's another way to look at it, that those ideas come in and maybe you've plotted it out to the number 25 one, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and then you've given your contribution to it and it moves on to someone who gets it fully formed in 24 steps.
Okay.
It goes into consciousness. So maybe
Yeah.
your job was the first 24 steps.
Okay.
Do you
Yeah.
see? So you can
Yeah.
pass it on more fully formed,
Yeah.
which I think is pretty cool. Like, how does Chris Martin of Coldplay wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. with the song We Pray fully formed in his head? Like, where does that come from? Is it something that he and his some level of himself was generating along? Is it something that the universe wanted us to get? Is it something the whole world was generating collectively and passing it on to someone who could fulfill on it? Do you see what I mean? It's like, but once you open to the genius superflow, whatever that looks like for you, however you do that, those ideas come and move through you and you add your contribution, and then if you send them on, you send them on. If you fulfill them, you fulfill them. You don't always have to be the one
Yeah.
to
No,
make
that's a
it
good
so.
idea to send it further. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, and know you've contributed
Yeah.
to its fulfillment in the world, which is a kind of different way to look at it. So yeah.
Can I might just say something which might also be useful? It's not time dependent either, these things that we do. I wrote one book, took me 9 years. At the beginning, I only had a few paragraphs. I didn't understand what the book was going to be about.
Mm.
But over the years, I gradually got more insight into how I could put the words together to make not just sense,
Mm.
but also an energetic transformation of myself was taking place. And therefore, the actual process of the writing itself helped me to go to different levels of consciousness, which then made, once the book was done, absolutely a gift.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a gift because I could see things were being put into place energetically in consciousness. And that's the way that I write. But I just wanted to make the point that things don't have to take place within the year or 6 months or whatever else.
Mm.
The whole thing about time, it just goes. You're not struggling to do things. You might be doing 25 things on the go at the same time, and some of them might take 10 years. Some of them might take longer. It's the process and the way that you almost like unfold yourself and you understand things as you're going along and you're expanding this awareness with it, which you're then writing or singing or doing art, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter about the time. It doesn't matter about whether you think I failed or nothing's happening. Something is maturing in you. So you've just got to give it that sense of itself to come and to fruition in the right moment.
Okay, so we've talked about the expansion and evolution of intelligence, right? The emotive power as an opening to the alchemical initiation of the work we do in the world. And we've talked about the unleashing of genius and the superflow of genius. And you can see how we're living templates of it. It's not some pie in the sky, hope we can get there someday. We're living this. We're evolving this. We're living it in ourselves. We're putting it in place so everyone can live into that intelligence, emotion, and genius. Okay, so the fourth one was connection. So if you, for me, in the last, especially the last 5 to 8 years, maybe 5 years, the deepening of connection with people, with myself, with animals, with nature, with the universe has deepened so richly. You look at Veda Austin's work with water, and Marina was part of working with the oceans as a sentient force, and like the deepening understanding and partnership and relationship in connectedness is very different than an individual walking around in a closed energetic state, which I was in my early adult life. I was very much like that. So, and then I can see you're all nodding and going, yeah, there is a kind of rich, some people have had that from birth. Like some people are just naturally nature animals, that whole thing. So, but if you realize it's a deepening, richening thing that's happening, I think, the world over. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it that we've been at work on is the unleashing of the miraculousness of nature and the expanding consciousness of all life forms, especially animals and oceans and forests and mycelium networks and bees and trees and, mountains and all of that, stars and creation itself in the universe. There's an expansion of our not only ability to assist in the sentient, intelligent consciousness expansion of all life, but also to understand what it has on offer for us. So it's not just what we can give it, but what it can give us. And so as a result, when we unleashed the miraculous of nature 3 years ago in our Memoration of Maestros group, we saw more green. We saw fields and fields and fields of yellow dandelions that were like radiant suns, flowers that went from this high to this high. Like you could just see the difference in the last 3 years as we did that work, and not just here in the UK. Friends in Australia would say it, friends in other countries would say it, that they had seen something like that too. So that's the second aspect of it. But the third aspect of it is that we, in the last, the Maestros group, in the last 1.5, 2 years, formed a new collective consciousness of all life forms. So the intelligence and consciousness of whales and dolphins and oceans and forests and mycelium networks and nature and earth and the universe and stars and galaxies, and we've took our own human consciousness, elevated it, evolved it, and then wove it together as a brand new collective consciousness, which contained all the wisdoms, all the experience, all the knowledge, all the learning of all the life forms. So when we do energetic work, energetic consciousness work now, where we used to do it maybe as, like, let's say how many are there's 11 of us on the call, right? So we used to do it, okay, so we're 11, we're like a circle, and then we'll power up as a circle and we'll do this, right? That was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now it's like, woo, there's the whales, there's the stars, here we are grand collective force of beings who are for the elevation of all life. And you can feel the difference in the field as we work now. I can feel it. The rest of you notice it too when we're doing it. Yeah, it's very, very different. Yeah, Lynn, you want to say something?
I'm just getting the image of this because I was wondering what is singularity, and I know that we've talked about this before, and I've listened to it somewhere. But it's that we're becoming the center. It's like the universe is running through us rather than that we are a part of the universe. And I think
Yes.
that's what we're talking about. At least that's what sort of to
Yes.
me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is. That's that part of that super flow. It's like we're in partnership with everything finally, as opposed to being individual human beings with a logical brain and a certain level of energy field and, being cautious about who we're interacting with. That was my old state in my early adult life. And now it's like, woo, like sources of reality, universes flowing through us, sourcing greatness in the world, elevating life. It's
But it
very
means that
different.
everything is me. It means that I am that.
Yes,
Everything I perceive is me as well. So that's, yeah.
yes, yeah. And then you add on to that number 5, which is the embodiment of all the levels of our being.
Mhm.
So before we were humans trying to reach to a higher self or a greater beingness, looking at past lives, looking at, trying to weave it in. And now it's like, well, that's just who we are. We're all of it and more, and we're constantly creating the next levels of ourselves. It's in presence, it's embodied, it's here. It's not separate from us any longer, which I think is just an amazing feat. And that's really come to light if you look in the last year. It's been happening for 3 to 5 years, maybe longer, but really came into place this past year. Can you see that if you look yourself? Like we were talking about, we were all together in March, a lot of us. And you look back then and you look at yourself now, it's like, whoa, I'm so different from then to now. It's quite extraordinary. Yeah. Because we're embodied, and then we embodied source in ourselves, in the earth, in the air we breathe. There's a kind of source presence, source consciousness, source energy, source vitality that we live in that's very, very different. And all of these things, so again, the evolution of intelligence, emotive power, the unleashing of genius, its super connectedness in a new collective consciousness, and the embodiment of being is leading to us being source creators of a new consciousness. And I define consciousness as not just being consciously aware, but the soup we live in, the energy that surrounds us. It's not quite, when I say constructs, that feels like an old matrix. And this week I was with a good friend who does amazing work, and I said, "Oh, we're going from a matrix to a creatrix." Because to me, consciousness is no longer a set in stone thing. Oh, there, we've learned this, we've got this wisdom. There, okay, now we do it this way. No, it's a constantly evolving, morphable creation in which the adventure is just divinely exciting. That's the consciousness that we live in now. So we are constantly adventuring into new territory. Whereas you look back 40 years ago and people would say, change is the most stressful thing in life, right? And now it's like, woohoo, bring on the adventure. What's next? What's new? What's exciting? What can we create? And it's the same thing as like beliefs. Like you'd get a belief and then you lock her in and go, oh, I got the new truth, right? But now I would discover, then you'd go up here and you go, oh, not that, this. And then you get this, and then you go, oh, there's more. And so it's like I don't hold anything locked in anymore. It's a constant evolution of how we orient to everything. It's an exciting evolutionary adventure that we're in of creation, which is to me amazing. And that brings us to sourcing our collective singularity. Right? Can you see it now? Can you see after we've talked all these things through in a particular way, you go, oh yeah, I am living in a completely different state than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm in a different place altogether. So anybody want to say anything about that or ask anything or play with it in any way? No? Okay. Okay, so what I want to do is take from all of that, like, oh, this is who I am now. This is who we are now. So just take a minute and like just sit in that for yourself. Like, oh yeah, this is who I am now. All that. And then it's like, oh yeah, this is who we are now. Each of us bringing our unique creative genius contributions, mastery, powers into the game. And it is a collective experience with all life forms and the universe and source and creator. And we are remaking the world, the human race, the way in which life occurs in the universe. Okay. Oh gosh, that was just lovely. You know, we've worked 2 days earlier this week in the Memoration Maestros group on the sourcing our collective singularity, right? And it never quite, it was like, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. That's kind of how it felt to me. Now, it feels like I expected the singularity to be like a kapow. Instead, it's like a aha. Like, oh yes, of course. That's how it felt to me when we just did that. Oh, it's so real. It's so natural. It's so easy. It's so here. It's already embedded in our lives and in the world. It's available to everybody to live as this. So yeah, that's what I got. Anybody else want to share what you got while we were doing that? Nope. Okay.
No.
Yeah, Sheila.
Kind of like what you said, just like real peaceful. Just like it's all perfect. It's just all here and it's all perfect.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It was great walking through those things, wasn't it? Yeah, thanks, Gunhild. Love you. It was great walking through those things to see how they're embedded in our life now. Because you don't, it's like we live in it and we might have recognized something new as it was coming in, but then it becomes part of the day-to-day routine. You don't really think about it anymore. But actually, we've evolved so profoundly in the last 10, 20 years, like really the last, oh, 5 to 8 years especially. It's just been leaps and bounds over previous times. It's just been amazing actually to live like this. And if you notice how connected we're like family now, right? Like it's not like, oh, we live in different countries and we get together once a week. And no, it's like family. There's a connectedness in us all that's quite extraordinary that I absolutely love. So, yeah. Anybody else, anything you want to ask or share or add into any of that before we go? Good on you, Centauri. I love the reactions on Zoom. I can put a few of those in myself. There you go. Hooray! That was brilliant. I loved doing that with all of you. I am so thrilled to know every single one of you and to be able to do this kind of creation together is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody. Have a magical, magical rest of your start to 2025. Love you lots. Bye.